Okay, so welcome, and also welcome to the Facebook people that are on there now. We've got over 200, which is fantastic, and the feedback we get after they go out on the Facebook and YouTube has been really lovely, and the opportunity for me to talk about the things that I feel that I know about, and the feedback that we're getting is really lovely. And especially the one about limerence that came back gave people a really strong idea about what that was all about. So this is great that we're putting stuff out there, and it's free and it's accessible, which I really love that side of it. So tonight we're talking about sex doesn't start in the bedroom. And it's a really interesting topic because what we're talking about is intimacy and how we define intimacy for ourselves as human beings. And I've thought about it a lot today, how to start this. So it might find like it goes from one thing to another, but I thought it was really important to talk about what it is for us. So intimacy can be where we become vulnerable within a relationship. Okay, so when we talk about intimacy, we're talking about emotional, spiritual, physical, and I've got the other one here somewhere. So we've got emotional, physical, spiritual, and what we're talking about when we're talking about intimacy is how we think about it ourselves as an individual. So there will be some people who find being intimate really, really difficult. Okay. And there'll be other people that find that really, really easy. So the work that I do with couples and individuals is working out where they are on that parameter and where they feel it's easy to talk about or easy to display that. So one of the things I've started off with is the public show of affection. So when we're out and about, so when you think about, we're not thinking about just intimacy and sex within the bedroom. We're talking about how does it have a lead up to being able to go to the bedroom and have sex. Okay. And for me, a show of affection outside and being able to be comfortable, both of you being comfortable with that, is really important. And I put here a couple of things. So respecting each other and finding out how that works for both of you on the intimacy level. There'd be somebody that wouldn't want to hold hands while they're out, and there'd be somebody that would long for that intimacy to hold hands. And for me, that's one of my favorite things, for the guy to slip his hand into my hand and hold my hand. There's something about security and safety, and there's a warmth to that I want to give more to that person. Also, the value in intimacy, being able to think about how can sex be looked at in an intimate way before we even get to thinking about sex. So, and I love the word adoration. So being adored by somebody, not to the state that we're in limerence and we go obsessional, but adoring somebody that actually we're both supporting each other in that process. And then attention. So we need a build up to have sex. So the intimacy part of this is so, so important, so that we build on that. So I was thinking about my couple work and the stories that I get told. And you can actually see by the stories that are happening in front of me why intimacy disappears and why we think about, the sex doesn't start in the bedroom. It's way before that, leading up to. Okay. And so if your partner feels that the only place that they don't get ignored is in the bedroom because the sex is being asked for, and that can be male or female or same-sex gender, it's not about that. It's about being able to sit in that place of, how do I feel about not having any intimacy leading up to having sex in the bedroom, and how does that leave me feeling? So being taken for granted, being used, feeling that I'm not appreciated as the provider of the house, or appreciated for somebody that's looking after children and making a lovely home, and not being able to facilitate that intimacy before we get to the bedroom. So I've written down here, holding hands, kissing, cuddling, affection, definitely appreciation, and also tasks. When we think about, usually in relationships, there's two people working, and when they come home, the tasks never stop. The perfunctory part of our life never ends, as in washing up, dishwashers, cooking. That's part of what we do. So one of the things that actually can be really helpful within a relationship is the task sharing, so that nobody is taken for granted. And then the small gestures, touching each other along the way, sending little texts to each other to say, I'm thinking about you. So all of this builds up the intimacy, so that actually when you get into the bedroom, it feels like there's more process gone on before you even get there. So there's a lead up, there's a turn on, because don't forget, all of this is in the mind. Our sex process starts in the mind. So how we feel about ourselves, how we're being seen as a partnership, the things that we want to do in that partnership, and being able to come back together on it. So talking about that, when we talk about everyday acts, so being able to come, I'm just going to mute you, Lally, just for a minute, if that's okay. Yeah. I can hear stuff. Everyday acts are so important, being able to connect with your partners. And I'm just going to give you a scenario. So we've got a couple that I've got permission to tell this story, is that they are a couple, they've been married quite a few years. They're in their 30s and they've had the opportunity to go self-employed, and they've been able to find this product to make that actually has become really successful, which is fabulous. But in that process of it becoming successful, they have had a sort of a slight fracture within the relationship. So he is the provider. The partner is not working at the moment. She's looking after their little child. This is what they contracted for, and she's helping the business, but she feels completely on the outside. So he's working 24/7. Their sex life is diminished. The intimacy is just not there. And it's all full pelt on this new idea. Okay. But when the brief comes in, it says that he's really stressed and would like more support. And she's saying that actually she feels that she would like to be more of the business, but also have her own aspirations. As much as she wants to be a mother, she still wants to be able to go and think about the job she wants to do and have a career in her own way. So when we look at just that scenario, we've got stress, we've got resentment. Okay, we've got a bit of abandonment and slight rejection. So when we think of that in the intimacy stake, so when those two people come together, how are they going to reunite each other and be okay? So, you know, some of the stress relief that we have comes from having sex with each other. So that connection that we can have, that closeness that we want. And that would be at the end of the day, usually when they're both absolutely shattered for different reasons, but the intimacy won't be there. And then the resentment in the bedroom will grow. So in a therapeutic way, we'd be looking at the couple and saying, right, okay, how can we slightly diminish some of these stresses that are going on? And what can we carve out for the couple when it's not just the bedroom stuff? It's something that happens throughout the day. Being able to stop for a minute and do a text with each other. Being able to actually check in with each other. How are you doing? Because on both sides, there's resentment building up. Actually being supported, feeling rejected, and work can be a sort of a real intimacy killer, because there's something about being successful and providing and something that's been designed that actually is taken off, which is a massive achievement, and doesn't want to let that go. And I completely understand that, and so does his partner, but they're fracturing along the way. So we've got to try and bring our couples back on track to actually start the intimacy even before they're anywhere near the bedroom. So the things that I think about is being able to sit in your truth. If you can come to therapy, or you can sit together as a couple and go, this is great, but it's not working at the moment for me or for us. Because when we're in a relationship, and I do it like this, we need to stay connected, even though we've got all this around us, which could be buying a house, buying a car, family, having children. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to stay connected. So with all that, each side, we need to stay connected. Otherwise, we are successful, we do build an empire, but we end up going like this because we haven't stayed connected enough to be able to say, who are we now? We've got some money in the bank, the pressure's gone, the children have grown up. Who are we now to each other? And along the way, because of these processes, we've done some exits. So we're going to the gym more, or we're facilitating going out with girlfriends more, or mates more. So we start to lose the connection with each other. And this is why intimacy, that's why I always talk about intimacy and then sex, because intimacy is the key to actually keeping a couple together. For me, it's fundamental, being able to connect with each other. So if you think about physically, that's touch, skin to skin connection. If you think about emotionally, being able to sit with your partner and share your deepest thoughts without judgment, your aspirations and your dreams. Do you remember when you first met and you stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning? I'm sure that doesn't happen that often now, but actually giving yourself time to say, this is what I need for me. And as many people know, I always go on about the I and the we. You're still an I, even though you're a we. So what are your aspirations? What do you need to go towards? What do you need from your partner that you're with at the moment? Because we let go of stuff along the way. We just go, oh, that doesn't matter. I'll swallow that resentment down and I won't bother with it. And what we've got to do is talk along the way, be able to say to our partner, I'm not okay at the moment. So we need to come from a really truthful place. Then I look at consistency. How consistent are we being within the relationship? And when we look at the Tony Robbins, the relationship creed, which I've spoken about before, we need to look at the first three. Okay, so the first one is, how safe do I feel intimacy wise within this relationship? Because remember, intimacy is about vulnerability. So how safe do I feel? How can I share my feelings with my partner? Is he too busy and he's trying to really create this, dynamic thing that he's made and doing it for us? Or can I just forget about my feelings? And this can be either partner. Can I forget about my feelings and let him carry on or her carry on as they are? I wouldn't, because we're stacking up resentments along the way, which means that they're going to explode eventually. It's better if we do it as we go along. So the consistency of the relationship is really important. How consistent are we being with each other? Can we say that actually we need to set time aside and say this is what we need to do? Kindness. So kindness is just so important, being kind to each other, supporting each other, just stopping for a minute. And I don't know whether couples do this that come and listen to the talks that I do, but put a percentage in. I've come back from work and I feel like I can only put 30% in. And your partner might say something like, okay, I'll do 70% tonight. So you've got 100% going on, but the percentages are very different. And then the following night, it might be, actually, I've only got 20%. I've got 80% that I can put in. So this could be really a good gauge of where each of you are, who's got the most energy at the moment. But you might both say we've got 20% each, so you've got 60% missing. That's okay, because then we can say, right, we won't do the laundry. We'll leave her certain things till later when we both can come back and do it together. So the percentage thing can really be quite useful to actually gauge where you both are. And then I'm still going to go back to touching. I'm not talking about sexually touch. I'm just talking about a soft hand across the shoulder, just kissing your partner on the head, just really acknowledging, both of you, that actually it's been quite a difficult day. It's been a really long day. And you want to be able to come to a place of mutual understanding and give yourself an opportunity to just slow this down completely. And then talking, okay? Being able to communicate with each other is just the key to being able to say, this is what's going on for me, okay? And some of it might not always be verbal. It might be non-verbal communication, okay? It might be, you're not saying it, but you're just going to cuddle your partner. And just be there with each other. And I love David Schnartz. He talks about hugging and re-hugging. So hug for a while and then start hugging again, which is so lovely, because sometimes we immediately come away from each other for whatever reason that might be, okay? And then we can sit and just re-hug again and sit in that space and be able to sort of sink our heart slightly and just stay there for longer than you thought you would, which is so lovely. So let's look at blocks to the lack of intimacy and where that comes from. And I look at it as unhealthy behaviors. If we're looking at the lack of intimacy, there's some behaviors that's going, which I've mentioned already, but things like forgetting important dates, so anniversaries, birthdays, things that would be only significant in your unit. Okay, that might be things that are quite negative as well, losses and things, but actually really on an intimate level, really being mindful about when these things are coming up. The blocks to intimacy can be resentment. There might be something. I get couples come to see me and they say to me, 5 years ago when you said this, or 6 years ago when this happened. So we will hold on to resentments because they're swallowed down. We accept it to a certain extent to carry on the relationship, but they're not diluted enough for us to forget them completely. So like I said just a minute ago, everyday acts are about truth. coming to therapy and saying, actually, I'm still holding a grudge about this. I'm still holding the resentment about that. And we've got to dilute that, because that's something that will block the intimacy. Because do I trust you enough to hold me? Do I trust you enough to share the most vulnerable things that I'm thinking about? And where will that take us if I do? So we need to look at blocks. I didn't write loads down actually about blocks. I just thought to myself, I want people to think about what would the blocks be to intimacy. Definitely resentment, definitely forgetting dates and important things that have gone on in that relationship. No one else will have those dates. It will be you two, that sacred you two, that will have those dates, which are important, and they need to be remembered. We don't want one partner reminding the other partner. We want both of you to come to the table and go, I know what day it is today, whatever that might be. It might be an occasion, or it might be a loss of some sort. Being able to be aligned with that is very, very intimate. And when we're talking about emotional intimacy, we're talking about being able to have those in-depth talks. Some people are really scared of them. Some people think it's going to cause conflict. And what we're doing is actually there is growth happening while we tolerate the discomfort to have these conversations. And when we talk about spiritual intimacy, we're talking about alignment, we're talking about meaningful, we're talking about what's our purpose together. So these are really important things that we need to think about on levels of different intimacy and where we are with it. And if you've got somebody that's really quite forthright and shows their love in a certain way, and you've got somebody that holds back slightly, what we're looking for is not compatibility. We're looking for how can we align that. Okay, so S3x talks about how we were loved as a child is how we're loved as an adult, and that will play out within the relationship that you're in now. Being able to sit in a place and go, right, okay, what is my pattern for love, and how do I express my adoration, my affection, my personal space for this other person to come into that space, and all of that's got to be negotiated, because it'll be different for absolutely every single person. So how do we build intimacy? Okay, so intimacy is connection, being able to connect to another person. And I guess words really don't tell me or be able to tell you guys how important intimacy is. It's just on a different level. It's just something that is so sacred to the people that are in your life. And I'm talking about partnerships at the moment, but intimacy is with lots of other people as well on different levels, which is so, so important. So what I'm talking about couples tonight, okay? What I want couples to do is actually notice the changes and act upon them. So if we're able to actually see something that sits with us that doesn't sit quite well, you're not quite sure why, but we want a partnership where we can go, actually, was upset yesterday when this was said, but I'm not quite sure why. Can we just have a conversation about it? So I want you to act on these things and not build them up like a big list to be, written and then spoken about. So, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, this is what happened. And I want to declare all of it. What we want to do now, if we're starting from, 5 years and day one, is actually this hurt me, or I was just about to hold your hand and you pulled away. There will be some unconscious process going on that the other person had no idea they'd pulled away, but you were left feeling abandoned or rejected, because that would have been something maybe in your family of origin. So really think about how you can have a conversation about, what does our intimacy look like? Okay, what are we negating or having a deficit for if one person really wants their hand held because it makes them feel warm and safe, and the other person says, I'm never going to hold your hand? Just think about that for a minute. It's something that you're never going to get. And I get my couples to practice all these, because change is possible. Okay, I had a client once who said, I'm never going to buy a card. Never, ever going to buy a card for you. You'll never get an anniversary card. You'll never get a birthday card. And it was something from the past that had held him back. A card had been rejected and he was never going to buy a card again. This was a new person to him, an identity to him that actually was an opportunity for him to have a newness in his life, an aliveness, a connection. And it was shutting down that from something in the past. So we made a card. I had a single session with him. We made a card. We didn't buy a card. We made a card. Not that I'm that creative in that aspect usually, but we made a card. And honestly, she would have moved the earth for him. These small, even though big gestures for the person doing it, the small gestures that come across to the other person is absolutely huge. And for me, it comes down to being, am I safe with this person? Am I able to trust him with all the things that I want, my aspirations, my dreams, my hopes for the future with this person? Can I share them with this person? And that card made massive difference. And I will just share with you an intimacy where I did somebody with a trial separation, and they read a book, and he wouldn't read the book while they were together. But when they did the trial separation, he read the book, he wrote little tiny notes next to everything. And when she come back, that book was the intimacy that she was looking for. You bothered, you cared. So it can be these challenges we have while we're together that actually we don't need to keep splitting up or having trial separations. We actually need to look at ourselves. Who am I becoming while I'm in this relationship? And how can I navigate being different, wanting to be different? It's all a choice, but actually if a need is there and it's available to us, then we need to see whether we can change or not. The second one comes to that new attitudes and skills that lead us to be able to ask for our needs to be met. Now, S3x talks about, you can't have one person doing absolutely everything. And I totally agree with that. If we do that, we're doing that to the other person and they end up falling over. So we do find our other intimacies outside of the relationship. So our really good friends, our families, being able to connect with our children. So there are other ways, but it's about what's the attitude towards that? How do you feel about wanting your partner to be the one and everything to you, and they're not? And how can you look at yourself as an I and try and find some of that for yourself? So your partner and you come from very different backgrounds, culturally brought up in a different way of being. So you weren't there with them. You don't know what their triggers are, or their green flags or their red flags. You're getting to know them as you go along, and you'll find out all these things. But what we're looking for with intimacy is safety. How safe am I to be able to do this with you? And some people's family of origin, and I'm not blaming parents, okay, they knew what they knew and this is how they brought you up, but it's how you survived some of that, how you negotiated some of that, will be how you then play out your intimacy. Then we're looking at commitment to looking at your own behaviors first. Notice changes, resentment, anger, and stress. So it's very easy to keep looking out and saying to your partner, you're not that loving either. But what we get to is two people with so much resentment that nobody's giving over anything. And what we've got to do is commit back to who am I becoming while I'm in this relationship, and what do I need to change? So we're looking for our partner to be different. And actually what we need to do is actually do a lot of the talk to ourselves. So how am I being? Am I aligned with my authenticity and autonomy? Am I being how I want to be with this person? And then it gives us the opportunity to go, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm feeling. And then the other person brings their stuff into the mix, and then we can look at it. I always talk about a table. There's two sides of this table. You put your stuff on the table and I'll put mine. And let's see how aligned we are. And what we're really looking for is the bits that aren't aligned. And we don't have to be completely aligned with everything, but what we're looking at is being able to go, right, okay, I'm okay if you don't want that. I can live with that, but what I would like is this. So somebody might not be a hand holder, but they might be a cuddler. So we've got to navigate all of that with each other. Support each other, and listening skills. Okay, being able to listen really well with each other. I've got quite a few couples at the moment, and it's almost like, I don't know whether I talked about it before, the Thompson and Kilman conflict solutions. Okay, he talks about competing and accommodating and compromising, and there's a few others. And we've got to look at what conflict we are having within the relationship, because with conflict, there is lack of intimacy. There's conflict all the time. We talk about the power struggle, and when we're in the power struggle again and again, or we stay there, there's lack of intimacy. So we've got to align each other with a communication, which I do a lot of the time, which is a Margot dialogue, being able to get them to slow everything down, talk in one sentences, get it repeated back, and be able to really hear what the other person's saying. Because if you think that both people are competing, they want their needs met, I'm sure I'm right, no, I'm right, nobody is actually hearing each other. What they're doing is they're setting up the defense to actually speak before you've even stopped saying what you're saying. They're already putting in their mind what they're going to answer. And the reason for that is that usually arguments go round in a cyclical process, and they are usually the same thing again and again, but put in a bow and it seems different. So what we're looking for is the similarity of what the argument is about, so that we can answer it really clearly. So the imago dialogue can really, you can't do that all the time because it's very slow, and you'd need to do it when you're ruminating about the same thing again and again and again. So that really helps to support each other, saying, I want to listen to you. I want to hear what you're trying to say so that I can answer in a way that actually gives us alignment. I'm understanding you. But we can't do that when we're just crossing over with each other all the time. It doesn't work. Welcome to the two other people that have come in. So I always go back to the I, as you know, if anybody's worked with me, is working on yourself and know what you want from the relationship. So this is key. So when we're talking about intimacy and you've got one partner saying, what would you like? What would you want from me? And the other person goes, I don't really know what I want from you. I just want you to be more loving. Okay, what does that actually mean? Okay, so when we go to the bedroom, I know what you want there. There's signs. I know when you rub my thigh, I know what you're asking for. I know what is expected of me. That can feel quite intimidating, like here we go again. The intimacy is the lead up to all of that, being close to each other right the way through, so that we're not having that resentment in the bedroom, that we can actually be able to have that really lovely flow, to be able to go, we've had a beautiful night, we've had a lovely time together. And even though the title of this is, you know, sex doesn't start in the bedroom, I actually don't believe that we always have to have sex, even though we've gone to the bedroom. Why don't we try other things? Why don't we do some breath work, some tantra, some kundalini energy, some different ways of being with each other? Why are we doing the same linear process of excitement, plateau, arousal, you know, orgasm and resolution? Why don't we try some other things within the relationship? Because there's such a pressure sometimes of actually going, right, we need to have penetrative sex now. And I feel sad for that, because I feel that there's so much to this. And I feel that the intimacy actually is the foreplay. And actually, when you get in the bedroom, why don't you just continue with the foreplay? So if you've got things that are going on and you're really exhausted, do some foreplay. Doesn't mean you have to have sex. Just, it's all sex really, but we name it differently. But the intimacy can be the foreplay, and then you lead up. So that might be ending up really cuddling, spooning each other, maybe sharing something, an emotional sharing process for an hour or so, instead of feeling like there's an expectation. So the way I look at some of this stuff is there's a warmth to it. And I wish I could explain that more. But when your partner, you know, the person slips their hand into your hand, there's such a warmth with that, a security, you know, like a safety to it. Also sharing tasks. I have so many people come and see me who are arguing about chores. Life is too short to argue about chores. They will always be there. Okay, they're not going away. So we've got to get the chore list off the internet, and we've got to share it. Okay, you know, two people are working. It doesn't matter what work it is. If you're both working and doing a role or whatever, then the house and all of that is belongs to both of you. You bought it together. So we've got to maintain that. And we have more rows about chores than anything else. And what we're looking for here is respect. If we're rowing about chores, it means you're not feeling respected. If you're not feeling respected, the intimacy won't come online mentally, brain-wise. It just won't come online. So we've got to try and share that load. There's nothing nicer than a chore being done that's unexpected, and somebody comes in and goes, I've just got to do that. And it goes, done. There's almost like a, oh, how wonderful is that? Let's get a glass of wine or a cup of tea. Let's go and sit down together. And you can then go into any intimacy that you want to. I always look for soft acknowledgement. Okay, that means we talk about John Gottman a lot, and he's wonderful. And we talk about the harsh setups and the soft setups. And I want us to have really soft acknowledgements about intimacy, being able to talk to each other on a really soft level, being able to explain yourself in a way, you know, slowly explaining yourself in a way that gives you the opportunity to go, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but just hold fire a minute, just stop a minute so I can really think about it. Because intimacy is born from patience and slow and being able to say what you really feel. We don't want each partner to go, is it this? Is it that you're feeling? Because you're interrupting that flow of that really intimate emotional side coming out. And emotional intimacy is just so important. This is such a big subject. Intimacy is such a big subject. I was reading some things today and I just thought this is so big. And how we feel about intimacy and where we go with it and what we feel about ourselves about it is just so big. The complexity of our way of thinking about it is so big. Okay. And I think when I think about when it starts to fade, because most couples come to see me when it's fading, not when it's enhancing. And it takes me back to, I think it was the second or third session we did with Harville Hendricks. When we meet somebody, we have the ideal where it's all loved up and everything. And then we have the power struggle, the ordeal. And couples come to me when they're in the ordeal stage and they're stuck. Because normally we come out of it and that we buy a house and that's stressful. We have a kid, it's stressful. All the things we do, but we go back into it and we stay there, and that's when there's lack of intimacy. We just cannot seem to see each other on a level where we can actually have those conversations which are really deep and meaningful. We don't very rarely touch each other because there's this sort of like fight or flight thing going on, that if I give you the hint that I'm okay with you now, or if I show you some affection, then that will mean you might think we're okay again, or it might mean that you want sex. So we don't do any of that. That completely goes. Communication and intimacy are the first thing that usually leaves the relationship, and it's the most wonderful thing that we need more than ever while we're in the power struggle. And then the whole point of the power struggle is for growth. And then we come back out of that and go to the real deal again, which is where we settle down and we're okay with each other. So I want to sort of normalize that the stage you find yourself in, whatever that is for you as a relationship, so you don't stay in the loved up stage, you come out of it, is absolutely fine. But what we're looking for is, and I've told you this just a minute ago about the relationship creed, is about being able to say, how safe do I feel? How spontaneous can we be? And how significant am I? So there's another 3 to that. But I think when I'm talking about limerence, I really am talking about safety, playfulness, and significance. So if there is no leading up to the bedroom, and the bedroom is always like it is, that sex happens, it is consensual, but it's not really what you're wanting, and it's not really what you want to have, then we are missing out on those 3 elements. It doesn't feel significant. The person doesn't, you don't feel significant. There's no spontaneity. It's the same all the time. There's no lead up. And actually, how safe do I feel within this relationship to be that vulnerable? So that's what I'm sort of talking about. And we can get bogged down by work, feeling neglected, abandoned, rejected, feeling second, and not feeling important. And those are the things that we can carry in our family of origin in one way or another, not all of them, but maybe 1 or 2, that we need to actually think about in our relationship. What emotion do I keep going back to when I'm trying to be intimate, or I'm trying to say I'm not okay with us being okay in the bedroom without us leading up to something? So I wonder what the emotion would be attached to that. And men and women are different. So, you know, the complexity of sexuality, when I think about, you know, that warmth that women need to be able to come into that process, and men being able to feel close to their partner, that's really significant for the relationship, because intimacy is built on different ways of being, and we need to find out what that is. So when we've got that deficit within the relationship, it's really painful, and it affects everything. It affects how you treat your children. It affects how you are at work. It affects your couple relationships or your single relationships. So we can find ourselves really sort of falling and not being able to hold that space for ourselves in a couple relationship. Any questions at all? Anything in the chat? Anybody thinking anything, or? No? Okay. So when we talk about intimacy, I want to talk about making sure that it's aligning to the behavior. Okay. So the conversation that you have about intimacy is really important, what you're asking your partner to be able to do. And if it's something that they didn't have in their family of origin, so much affection, it would be something they'll have to think about. So I must hold her hand. Okay. Now, when we've got a situation like that, we don't always have to wait for somebody else to initiate. We've got to practice outside. Maybe that person would like to walk around the market in Winchester at Christmas and hold their partner's hand, but their partner would feel like that was something that they would never normally do. So we wouldn't practice it there where your partner pulls away from you. We would be practicing at home. And I know it sounds like, really? Absolutely. We have to practice these different things so that when we go out, we're not triggered. We're not actually going, I don't want to do that. It's not happening in real time when you're with other people. We have to practice how we actually align ourselves to each other in intimacy. So giving affection, taking responsibility of different things, like the tasks we were talking about, but being aligned with each other on lots of different levels. So the other thing I want to talk about, and I mentioned foreplay just a minute ago, but what are the other things that could stop you becoming intimate? And one of the things I've got down here is the smartphone, how we disengage. So sex does not exist in a vacuum, okay? It's connected to everything, and everything we think, everything we do. And we might not think that, but the erotic transference that's around us all the time is always there, okay? And what we're trying to do is, as a partnership, is elicit some of that erotic transference throughout the day, so that when we get in the bedroom, it just feels like it's a linear process that we've got there because of all the lovely things we've done in between. Okay, so that I talk about smartphone disengagement. I'm not talking about when you're not together. That's fine. Sending a lovely little text, thinking of you, little heart emoji, whatever that might be. And you set that up as a contract with each other. Within therapy, I don't know how other therapy, but we would be saying, right, okay, let's do a contract for this. So some of this stuff will be a bit contrived, first of all, to get our brain with a neural pathway saying, this is what we do. This is what we're going to start doing. We need a reminder for it. I get people to look in their phones and I say to them, just give me an idea of what's in your phone on Monday. And they go, oh, I've got a meeting then, and I've got to catch a plane, and then I've got to do that. And I go, where are you two? Where's your names? Where's Alice and Jim? Made up names. Alice and Jim, where are you in that week? Nowhere. Nowhere have they said, Alice and Jim, 15 minutes, check in with each other. So smartphones are really useful when we're not together, but they are a real hindrance when we are together. They can kill intimacy because we are always looking for outside gratification and FOMO and what other people are doing. What we've got to do is have a drawer at home to put our phone in, okay, on silent, don't have to turn it off, and come together. So my couples do 15 minutes, 7.5 minutes each of how are you? Okay, and this is hard stuff. It's only 15 minutes, 7.5 minutes each, but they sit there and they say, I am really busy at work. No, that's not how you feel. That's what you do. So we've got to, in session, we've got to really think about how am I feeling? And it's so lovely. They slowly, after 3 weeks, sink into that process of going, yeah, I'm okay. I've had a few frustrations today. But actually this afternoon I felt really happy, and that has continued, and I feel good sitting here saying this to you. So there's a different feel to when they first start. Okay, some people do 3 minutes and go, what do I do with the rest of the time? Just sit there. What we're trying to do is manifest being able to just be with the other person, not do with the other person. That's intimacy. Pure intimacy, just sitting there with the other person. I was talking to a colleague of mine today about eye contact, how we get couples to have eye contact. We do the process of decentering, which is we face our clients to each other, and we give the opportunity to get them to say something, you know, I get frustrated, or I appreciate, or whatever it might be, and they're looking at each other. And it's really important to see the eye movements of actually who looks down all the time, who doesn't look up. And some people won't do eye contact for a reason. Okay, there's many reasons out there, but we can teach people to do eye contact. I did that today with one of my supervisees, and I said to her, get the clients to look down and then count them up to 3 to look up and then back down again. And she texted me earlier and she said it worked, because it's not immediate. You're not getting two people who haven't been intimate for a long time to actually do something that would be really uncomfortable. You're giving them the opportunity to do it differently, and just allow that intimacy to take place. So I wanted to talk about also getting turned on. Okay, so when we talk about subjective or responsive, the reason why intimacy is so important is because it sometimes for females it can be really difficult to know whether we're turned on or not. Okay, we can have sort of like, I like the look of that, I like the feel of that, but actually to know whether we want to have sex or not is subjective. It's an I don't feel like I'm in the mood. So that's why I get my clients to do responsive. So if the partner can actually touch a part of their body, okay, could be the arm, and just see what happens. Even if you did it as an individual, a single person, you did it yourself and you continue to do that, there would be a reaction. So we need to see in the intimacy stakes where you are on actually responsive or subjective. It's very easy to say to a partner, I don't want to, or I'm not in the mood, or yeah, I'm too busy. What we're looking for is responsive. How responsive could you be to the other person? And that's intimacy for me, being able to say, let's start off and see where we are. You know, I went to a conference a little while ago, and there was 50 couples, and we did a lovely just them touching each other's hands, so one after the other, and they were just looking at hot or cold, soft or smooth, hairy or not, obviously. Well, I was going to say for the guys, but there might have been some women there with hairy arms, I don't know. But they would just go and, you know, touching their knuckles and feeling their hands, and then they closed their eyes and did it, and there was complete silence right across the room. And when I actually said to them come back, they were all like really trancy and like, oh, that was so lovely, that was just so not nice being able to do that. And I want my couples to do these little, you know, the check-ins for 7.5 minutes, the touching of the hands, all these little tiny things to build up to actually, when you get in the bedroom, the tension has been built up enough so that we actually want to do more in the bedroom. And that's the important part, being able to lead up to get your mind in gear, because sex starts in the brain, as we know, and be able to think about pleasure, joy, seduction, definitely flirting, okay, along the way. So there's a lovely friend of mine called Kate McKenzie. She works for Seed Talks, and I'm going to be doing some talks for them soon. And she does a whole thing on flirting. She's worth going to see. She is wonderful. She's a comedian. She's very, very funny. So go and see, because flirting is really, really, it's wonderful. It's another language that we can use to actually engage our partner, be playful, be silly, and give each other that opportunity for that excitement, that tension that we're building. Don't forget, when we live together, there is no tension. It's flatlining. Whereas when you live separately, aftershave and perfume and lipstick and gel in your hair, whatever it might be, you're meeting up. So there's that anticipation. When you live together, there isn't that anticipation. We've got to build it back in again. So maybe do intimacy for a while before you have sex. Build that tension back up, which I think is really, really important. Okay, that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. You know, sex doesn't start in the bedroom.